We need to talk about this Maryland midwives disaster because it goes beyond just Maryland, with parents forced to watch those responsible for the death of their babies just move on. Right, so let me explain. So the Maryland State Board of Nursing is responsible for overseeing nurses and midwives, with the latter being someone trained to assist in childbirth while not necessarily being a doctor. And while they're not super common, they're also not unheard of. In fact, according to the Government Accountability Office, midwives assisted in 12% of the births in the US in 2021. And this is the number of midwives and midwifery students have increased in recent years. Notably, the extent of care midwives can provide, it varies by state. There are different types. A certified nurse midwife is one that has education in nursing and typically attends on patients within a hospital. But then certified professional midwives learn through apprenticeships and experience and don't work within a hospital, instead attending to most of the home births across the country. And in Maryland, they're referred to as direct entry midwives, with Maryland law requiring them to get a license from the State Board of Nursing and credentials from the North American Registry of Midwives. And that licensing, it's one of the main functions of the State Nursing Board, along with the investigation of complaints. But there, a Washington Post investigation found that the board has been, at best, struggling at both for years, leaving families who have already suffered an unimaginable loss waiting for justice and putting even more families at risk. And one of these families is the Pucketts. Following the birth of their first child via C-section in 2012, Naomi Puckett wanted to deliver her second child vaginally. So when she got pregnant again in 2014, she hears about Tina Overton and her business titled Birth Lily Childbirth Services through an advocacy group promoting access to VBACs, which is vaginal birth after C-section. And according to the Pucketts, Overton told them that she was a certified professional midwife and had years of training. And an important thing to note here is that the state of Maryland prohibits certified professional midwives from attending VBACs at home because the delivery poses a higher risk. Though Naomi says she had no idea about that at the time. And Overton helped her through a successful delivery of their second daughter in August of 2015. So gold star, everything's good. And when they learned that they were expecting again in 2017, the Pucketts once again hire Overton. On September 10th, 2017, Naomi goes into active labor. So Overton comes over to the house. And with her is a doula, which is a support person for women going through labor. But by early the next morning, Naomi's labor had stalled and there were hours that passed without any checks to her vitals or the baby's heart rate. And at around 9 a.m., Naomi had been in labor for over 24 hours. Overton then using a Doppler to listen to the baby's heartbeat and then telling the couple that they should drive themselves to the local hospital. And it's there that the hospital staff pronounced the baby boy dead in utero. With Overton arriving shortly after, and very notably, she introduced herself to the staff as Naomi's doula rather than midwife, with Naomi then being diagnosed with preeclampsia and spending days recovering in the ICU. And so then, fast forward a few months later, she shares her story in the Birth Circle of Baltimore Facebook group. And that's where she hears for the first time that Overton had absolutely no credentials to work as a midwife, with the North American Registry of Midwives director telling the Post they had no record of Tina Overton being credentialed and the state nursing board's public databases don't list her as a licensed midwife. And so the Pucketts then they take their case to the police, but they end up getting turned away, with the police saying that it wasn't a criminal matter. And so then they tried an attorney, but no one had any interest in a case against an unlicensed practitioner who likely didn't have any malpractice insurance. And so in 2018, they were encouraged to file a complaint with the State Board of Nursing, with Naomi writing she is illegally practicing midwifery care, putting mothers and babies at risk. She has devastated our family. And when asked about Overton, she said, if I had not been under her care, my baby would be alive. And around the same time the Pucketts filed their complaint, the Maryland Board of Nursing reported a massive jump in the number of complaints in a single year, going from just over 3,000 to 6,700. And that number has seen very little improvement since. 4 years later, that board still has a backlog of over 6,200 complaints. And this is you have the Pucketts still waiting for some accountability. And a big thing to look at here is that this board has been under public scrutiny for a while, though prior to this, mostly for their delays in the licensing of nurses, which actually caused many to lose job offers or even leave the state. But with this, right, their investigative failures mean that nurses and midwives who are accused of harmful behavior are just allowed to keep practicing. And in a 2022 meeting, the board's then executive director, Karen Evans, said that the window for closing cases had increased to 540 days. And so in response, a board member and a registered nurse posed a hypothetical question. Or what if you had a nurse accused of diverting drugs, asking would they be allowed to continue practicing for up to 540 days? And to that, an investigator said, quote, absolutely. Our team is burned out. I am burned out. We need help, and I've been screaming it from the top of my lungs for a very long time. And that is after an audit from 2021 drew attention to the severity of the backlog. In fact, finding that over 2,700 complaints had been open for more than a year, with the nursing board saying their problems stem not just from their ancient technology system, but from staffing shortages and a devastating ransomware attack in 2021. And y'all get this, according to the Post, the investigation team for the nursing board is made up of 4 investigators, and they're assigned hundreds of cases each. One single person has been assigned to investigate around 2,800 cold case files. And each month, the investigators take on around 30 new cases each while only closing around 5. Right, so this backlog's not going anywhere. And regarding the 2021 ransomware attack, it did absolutely cripple the Maryland Health Department. And in fact, some of the board's investigative evidence and recordings, they were lost, which also likely affected the Pucketts' complaint against Overton. Or the family reportedly filed a public records request for the recordings from their interviews in 2019, only for them to be later told in a letter, all this time after, that they were likely lost in the ransomware attack. But there's also more to this story than a staffing shortage and a data breach. Another recent post-investigation found that the state regulations governing midwives, they're patchy at best, and a lack of national standards make it hard to hold midwives accountable when births go wrong. The post-investigation there is centering around Karen Carr. She's a practicing certified professional midwife who was given her license by the board in 2020, despite a felony conviction for child endangerment that resulted in a baby's death back in Virginia. And since that investigation, 7 more families have spoken to the Post about midwives in Maryland and their home birthing experiences, saying that the Board of Nursing is putting the public at risk by not properly vetting midwives and investigating complaints. And these stories ranging from 2015 to last October. In fact, there are 36 direct entry midwives in Maryland. And according to an analysis by the Post, they have the highest rate of open complaints among all the professions that the board regulates. Their rate of complaints is 12 times higher than that of nurses. Just to give an example. And with this, we have seen some action being taken. Like last April, Maryland Governor Wes Moore signed an emergency bill directing the Secretary of Health to take over the administrative functions of the nursing board for 2 years. With the idea there being that this will allow board staff to focus on the big stuff, right? Licensing and investigations. But it's not clear that this will actually improve the speed of the investigations. However, the legislation also mandated a consultant report which said, quote, the National Council of State Boards of Nursing indicated that eliminating this backlog of investigations should be the #1 priority for Maryland. But with that, words are words, promises are promises, but until something actually gets done and we see the results, that's all they are. So while we wait to see what happens from here, I would love to hear from you, whether it's just your thoughts in general, or if you are or have experiences with midwives. What have they been? The good, the bad? Have any been connected to the things that we're talking about today?